All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Thursday. It is the 11th day of July. Quick personal note. Yeah, I was excited that England won. I picked England to be my team for the Euro Cup, and they're in the final Sunday. So that's something that I can take a little joy and a little pleasure, kind of distract me from the very, very distressing news that we just keep hearing over and over again. I think that's one of the advantages, or one of the reasons we are so easily diverted by sports and entertainment, is because there's so much grimness out there. And obviously that headline I've got right in front of you right now from the Free Press Kashmir: Gaza genocide, 52 more killed in the last 24 hours. So the atrocities keep building in Israel, or in Gaza, which is right adjacent to Israel, by Israel. Israeli atrocities continue. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. The program, though, I used as my thumbnail, Jill Stein saying, "Where is the love?" And I've really been a little bit, or a lot of it actually, pretty surprised, to be honest with you, that there's been kind of a blackout on news about Jill Stein, and talking about Jill Stein by the somewhat progressive, or really progressive in some cases, hosts on YouTube. I seem to be the only one, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I would love to see people like the Due Dissidence bros and Kyle Kulinski, who I've been critical of. I don't really think he's so progressive, but whatever. Love to see him. He supposedly, allegedly, according to Jill Stein, he endorsed Jill Stein. She says he endorsed her. I don't think he did. He didn't really do that. But if he did, why isn't he talking about her? She says he did. And we're not seeing that from Krystal. We're not even hearing Briahna Joy Gray talking much about Jill Stein, although she did interview Jill recently. But you'd think with all the I would think with all of the problems besetting the Democratic putative nominee, wouldn't you think that the folks who don't support Biden, who are critical of Biden like me, but who challenge him on the left, from the left, would say, hey, there's an alternative out there, and that alternative is named Jill Stein. And for those of you who would say, well, wait a second, Hal, just because you're, I know how you perceive me, crazy, you don't get it, you don't understand. Donald Trump is kind of like, if you put a list of the worst creatures and people on earth, I think you'd probably sandwich Trump right in there between Hitler and Satan. I understand that's how a lot of you feel. I understand that's how a lot of you view Trump. I don't think of him as, in those terms. I don't think of him as quite that satanic. But if you do, you'd say, well, of course, that's why Kulinski and the like don't talk much about Stein, because they get it, even though you don't. And my response is, yeah, but they're saying that he can't win. They're saying Biden can't win, that Trump's going to win. They're mocking Biden. If they were all in for Biden, if they felt, well, we've got to endorse the Democrat, why are they going after Joe, not even genocide Joe, demented Joe at this point? You'd think that they would say, well, better than nothing, demented Joe. Or they might even talk about Kamala. I think there's a kind of a recognition. Although, the polls don't necessarily bear out the suspicion, the view of so many that Kamala Harris has no chance. Maybe she does. Maybe she's a possible alternative. I'll show you that poll. In fact, I'll show you that poll right now. It just came out. I talked about this yesterday, that Kamala and every other Democrat who's being touted as an alternative to Biden does worse, right? That they all do worse even than old demented Joe. That's the real kicker for those who are insisting, well, we've got to beat Trump. If you say we have to beat Trump, Trump is Genghis Khan and Caligula combined. If you take that position, the problem you have is, well, who would be your alternative? And I showed you some polling from yesterday from Emerson that said they're all doing worse than demented Joe. But in this poll from the Washington Post, just came out today, and of course the Post, ABC News were reputable. They're good pollsters, right? This isn't some crap by night outfit. Trump only up by 1 nationally in the the election where everyone's included, including RFK, Cornel West, and Jill Stein. Interestingly, in that poll, both Stein and West polled 2, Kennedy at 9. So Kennedy support has dropped. By the way, Kennedy's a terrible choice. Please don't vote for RFK. I mean, this is a pro-crypto guy. This is a pro-genocide. And Israel guy, this is a guy who's not, clearly made it clear he's not for Medicare for all. He's embracing climate crisis conspiracy theories. In other words, that it's not necessarily real. It's being manipulated by government so that they'll have more control over you, which is absurd. Actually, the control we would be taking our control back if we addressed the climate catastrophe. The climate crisis actually, as it worsens and worsens and worsens, is a way for governments to have more control rather than less. The way to take our power back is to address it, to take the necessary steps to fight it. And of course, that's not what RFK Jr. calls for. RFK Jr. is a billionaire candidate, and his Veep is his selected, his nominee Veep is a billionaire. So yeah, you have no reason to have any hope or suspicion that RFK Jr. might be a good choice. I wouldn't vote for him. I'm obviously not going to vote for Biden or Trump. I'm not going to vote for RFK Jr. either. According to the Washington Post, it's a tie if you throw out the third party or alternative. I really don't want to say third. If you throw out the alternative party or the alternative candidates, it's a tie. And that's probably more likely to be accurate than if you include the alternative party candidates in the alternative, because I don't think RFK Jr. is even in a party. He's just running by himself. So if you exclude the alternative candidates, it's a tie, according to the Washington Post right now. And Harris actually beats Trump, according to the Washington Post right now. Now, I don't, this is one poll. Take it with a grain of salt. If there were a lot of other polls and they all said the same thing, which they don't, I'd be like, okay, yeah, well, hey, if you're a Democrat, I would say you rolled the dice. Given these numbers, I would stick with Joe. If this were accurate, if this were a legit snapshot, if you were confident on the left, if you were a confident Democrat that these numbers are accurate, I'd roll the dice with Biden. I think, obviously anytime you change, there's always a little bit of a risk. And even though it says Harris is up by 2, according to this, against Trump, and Biden's tied with Trump, I think you take a risk whenever you switch horses. That said, I'm not convinced, and Biden's, really struggling. No one seems to think Biden has a real shot, but maybe we should be more deferential. As Nate Silver told us, maybe we need to be much more deferential when it comes to the polls, that they generally do get it right. So just to get back, I want to juxtapose a couple of images, because this to me really kind of sums it all up and why there's no left, or it demonstrates, it proves there's no left in American politics right now in office. By the way, join me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I'm going to see if I can pop out that chat. It's nothing to see. We restored. Nothing to see here. Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to see the chats. Yeah, I can't believe all these other hosts. I was watching the Due Dissidence guys, Russell. They're good, by the way. I think they do a good job. Keaton. And they've got like thousands and thousands of people watching. Where the hell are you guys? Where are you all for me? I do a good show too, don't I? I think so. So this really tells you the story, I believe. Gaza genocide, horrible. This just published. 52 more killed in the last 24 hours. And remember, these numbers are understated. We don't know all the deaths. People are buried under rubble. We can't find everybody. These are the hard deaths, those we know about. According to the Lancet, there could be, close to 200,000 dead right now. There's no way you can spin this as though it's not very significantly on Joe Biden's desk. That this is an enormous, massive crime for which Joe Biden bears significant responsibility. He has failed to rein in our closest ally, Israel. He has enabled Israel. He has helped Israel kill 40, 50, 100, 150,000 Gazans. He's helped that. Given that fact, I don't see how one can vote for him. Now, the argument is, well, Trump would be even worse, and maybe he would be. I don't know. His rhetoric is probably worse. Of course, Trump also's rhetoric has much better when it comes to another war that has led to tens of 100,000 deaths, Ukraine. So, take that for what it's worth. I won't vote for Trump, but I'm not going to be part of the Joe Biden coalition either. But I'm apparently not representative of the left in Washington, because, and you can see this is from Kulinski. This is his little thumbnail from his program. Let's see if I can get this for you. I want to make sure it looks good. This looks, I don't like to put crap up there so it looks bad. So this, and I'm going to play a clip because this is Bernie and AOC, right? Those are our heroes, right? Those are our stalwarts. Joe Biden, the guy who is probably after Bibi the most responsible for those 40, 38, 40, 50, 100,000 deaths in Gaza, the killings by Israel. And look at those two smiling. He's our nominee. Well, there's no hope in Washington. There's no hope in the Democrat Party. It offers no light. It offers no light. But does Kyle Kulinski? I mean, Kyle, he doesn't support, at least not according to this video. Let's play this, because this is, again, really surprised me quite a bit, actually, that Kulinski, well, I mean, before we do that, let me just, in light of this, Jill Stein posted a few months ago, and I've talked about this, Kyle Kulinski for Jill Stein. And he did post a video, Kulinski did, that said, yeah, I support her. I think that's what he actually said, I support her. And he was kind of hedging in his language. He clearly wasn't real comfortable saying he supported her, but he did say it. And at least according to Stein, who I support, who I endorse, who I want you to vote for, Kyle did endorse her. And he's not the only progressive talk show host who supposedly endorsed Jill Stein. I think Briahna Joy Gray really has endorsed him. But according to these Vanguard guys, who I don't really like very much, I don't think they're very good. They're kind of phonies and BSers, but they're not. And they say right there, you can say Kyle and Krystal endorsed Stein over Biden, Cornel West. Now, to be fair, Jill Stein never said that. Only these, well, not only the Vanguard boys, some others did too, but these two do. So I'm like, okay, did they really? Are they really supporting Jill Stein? If they were, wouldn't you think now would be the time that they would be all in? I mean, because Biden's really struggling, clearly. Biden's a lot, there are calls for him to drop out. And he's a figure really right now of mockery on the left. And there's a sense, right? I mean, George Clooney has said, I can't support him. I can't. A lot of the Democrat donors won't give him money. They're convinced that's just wasting money and he's going to lose. There's never been a better time to rally progressive voters to vote for an alternative to the Democrat. And we don't even know who the Democrat is necessarily going to be because there's still so much pressure on Biden. Maybe it won't be Biden. Maybe it will be Kamala Harris. Maybe it will be Gavin Newsom. Maybe it will be Gretchen Whitmer. Probably be Biden. Biden says it's going to be Biden. I take him at his word, but we don't. Maybe it won't be. So why aren't these talk show hosts, these progressives, on the who are doing what I do, who are beholden to no one? Where are they when it comes to an alternative? And I actually don't have any answer. I'd like to know. 240-242-5646. Call me if you have any idea. Let's play this clip. I'm going to play it. You'll see where Kulinski is. He's pretty close to where I am, actually. Or at least he says he is. All right, guys,
so we've been tracking for you all of the different Democrats who are, what they're saying about whether or not Biden should remain the nominee. And you have some people who are just staying silent, saying absolutely nothing. You have some people who are sort of hinting he should go, but not saying it. You have some people now who are just saying he should go. And then you have others who are like, no, he should stay. And so the caucus genuinely seems to be all over the place in public, but in private, they're all like, we're cooked. Like all of us are cooked, not just Biden.
All right, so Kulinski's position right there is publicly, you may be hearing Democrats, well, maybe Joe should stay. Maybe he's really not done. Maybe he's got another 4 years in him. But what Kulinski's also saying is that's what they're saying in public, but I know what they're saying behind closed doors. I know what's going on in the smoke-filled room. And guess what? He's done. He's cooked. We can't win with Joe Biden. That's Kulinski's position. This was posted yesterday.
But the down ballot Democrats also, we're all cooked. So there are some Democrats who are publicly just sort of like all in still for Biden, which is fascinating. That's fascinating that that's a thing, right? So this is Bernie's.
So he doesn't get it, right? He doesn't understand why. Oh, I hope I didn't lose that spot. I'll get back to it. Kulinski doesn't understand why Bernie and AOC and the like are all in for Biden. He even says that's fascinating. He finds that fascinating. And I'll go back to it because I don't. I mean, they're loyal Democrats. They put party ahead of everything else. They put party loyalty above the truth. They put party loyalty above you. They put party loyalty above, and this is Bernie and AOC and every other Democrat. They put party loyalty above any kind of morality. And it's odd too, because the right in the Democratic Party, the centrists and the right, they don't. Joe Manchin, he's perfectly happy not to vote along with the rest of the party. He's perfectly happy to side with the Republicans time after time. You had those pro-Israel caucus, the pro-Israel caucus in the House of Representatives, that they were all in for Latimer over Jamal Bowman. Richie Torres basically just ripped a new one, ripped his fellow Bronx guy, Bowman, a new one, because he was insufficiently pro-genocide. So it's odd, isn't it, that AOC and Bernie are so beholden to a party that kind of always gives them short shrift. Elizabeth Warren, same thing. And, they're never going to be accepted by there's always going to be a suspicion that AOC and Bernie, well, Bernie's going to be dead soon, they'll be retired soon, but that AOC and the rest of them are just playing the game. They're just kind of going along with us because they want to, get their seniority. And then at some point they'll take the reins and they figure they'll move the party to the left. Which I think is in AOC's mind. I think AOC's saying, well, yeah, Biden sucks, but, he's not as bad as Trump, A, and B, if I support Biden now and I build up enough goodwill in the party, at some point I'll get real power and I can push a progressive agenda. Here's a flash for you, AOC. It's never going to happen. No one's giving you real power. The leadership, the money bags, they're suspicious of you. They always will be. They're always going to be in the back of their mind. She might not really be all in for for-profit healthcare. It's always going to be in the back of their mind. She might not really support war, militarism. So she's never going to get to the top of the tree in the Democratic Party. So I don't know why, so maybe that's why it fascinates Kulinski, because maybe Kulinski is like, yeah, these libs, these leftists, so-called lefties, are just totally fooling themselves if they really believe they have a shot at real power within the party. They are not going to drive policy. It ain't going to happen. So maybe that's why Kulinski is fascinated by the support that AOC, he's our kid, he's our guy. So I was pleased. Kulinski did a lot of work for me, put this clip together. So let's go back to him and hear a little more about what he has to say about AOC and Bernie and their support for Demented Joe. Let's see.
Here's what he has to say.
Politically, can he count on you to be on the campaign trail for him this summer and fall? Can he count on your support?
I've already done 6 events in Wisconsin. We've been to New York. I've been to Ohio. And let me say this, and maybe the most important point, Bob, I want to make this morning. What we are talking about now is not a Grammy Award contest for Best Singer. Biden is old. He's not as articulate as he once was. I wish he could jump up the steps on Air Force One. He can't. What we have got to focus on is policy. Whose policies have and will benefit the vast majority of the people in this country.
All right, I'll stop it there. So Bernie is just, all in for Joe. He's saying, yeah, maybe the guy's lost a few miles per hour in a fastball, but I'm supporting. And not only that, when you ask me if I'm going to support him, I've already done it. Look at all I've done for him. And I'm like, Bernie, why? What have you gotten from Joe Biden? Nothing. No support for Medicare for all. He didn't support, remember there was a possibility of a $15 minimum wage? Totally, and Biden said he would when he ran in 2020. He would support it. Nope. Endless war. Bernie's been probably the most against the blank check that Biden's handed Netanyahu. Probably the most of all electeds. Well, no, that's not fair. Rashida Tlaib, but other than Rashida Tlaib, I don't think anyone's been more critical of the pro-genocide policy that Demented Joe has been following. And yet, I've done all these events. I'm all for him. Kulinski has a great take on this. And I'm glad he has it, because those of you who are like, oh, Hal, you're not being fair, you're this, you're that. Some of you think more of Kulinski maybe. So let's hear what he has to say, but let's hear the rest of what Bernie's saying.
Who has the guts to take on corporate America? Who is talking about expanding Medicare so we cover dental, hearing, and vision? Who's talking about raising the cap on the taxes that people pay into Social Security so we can raise Social Security benefits and extend the life of Social Security for 75 years? Who's talking about a permanent child tax credit to cut childhood poverty in America?
I want to stop it there, because I'm wondering, did Face the Nation speed Bernie up? Because they may have compressed it when I used to do this on radio, right? Like I would do commercials and you'd have 65 seconds of content, but you only had 60 seconds to play it in. So you'd speed it up and you'd cut out the pauses. And it sure sounds like they did that, but Bernie speaks really quickly. Maybe Kulinski did it, although I don't think he could. Well, I don't know how he could, because he's playing this off of his X feed. So I'm going to assume Bernie just zoomed this through, but or maybe Face the Nation sped him up. But he's talking about all the great things that Joe Biden's talking about, expanding dental, vision, hearing. Did he really talk about that Medicare? Well, let's see what Kulinski has to say about that.
By 50%. Those are the issues he's talked about. He's got to bring them up in the floor. He's got to promise the American people that if they give him a Democratic Senate, a Democratic House, re-elect him, he's going to do that in the first 100 days. That is what I think the American people want.
Biden's not talking about.
I want to say I agree 100% with Bernie. that that's what the American people want. And that if they're, if that was what the Democratic Party stood for, there would be no problem here, even with Demented Joe at the top of the ticket. And again, I call him Demented Joe more because that's the way he's being presented. I think it's accurate. I mean, it's not like it's unfair by these hosts. But the reality is, it's policy. It's what Bernie just said that matters. That's what matters. And if Joe Biden's policies were making things better for the American people, heck, if they were not making things worse for the American people, I'd probably support him. But that's not what's happening. Let's see what Kulinski has to say about that.
A Democratic House, re-elect him. He's going to do that in the first 100 days. That is what I think the American people want.
Biden's not talking about those things. He's not. You just brought him up, Bernie. You did. He's not saying anything about any of that. All he says in 47 different ways is Trump is a liar, which is true, but it's Trump is a liar. Trump is unfit. He's against democracy. You pull the string on the back of the doll and it's just the same 3 or 4 things over and over and over. So he's not talking about those things. Now, look, I would be sympathetic to the idea of forget about the individual, just look at the policy agenda. This is all about policy. I respect that perspective. However, what Bernie's leaving out is that Biden is arming and funding a genocide in Gaza. That's a pretty big omission, if you ask me.
Yeah, if you ask me, is what he said. And Kulinski and that is exactly what I've been saying, right? I mean, maybe he watches my live streams. I don't know. But I wanted to play that for you because he's exactly where I am. Yes, policy counts. Policy matters. Policy is everything. Less like a little bit. And if Biden's policies were good, if he was talking about the things that Bernie says he's talking about, and if he weren't funding genocide, then he might be a good candidate. It sure sounds like Kulinski doesn't support Joe Biden. So what's the alternative? He never provides one. He never says, okay, vote for Jill Stein because Joe Biden's not acceptable, because there's no alternative, because there's no Democrat who's acceptable. But he doesn't say that. I don't understand that. Why is that? I went through that whole video. I looked at a lot of his videos. I do searches because you can get the transcript because YouTube's real good. By the way, just let me say about this. Shade complains, and I think with good justice, a lot of his posts are cut out. The algorithm won't let it. You maybe use a word they don't like, or they're too long, or they're this, or they're that, and he can't get it. And it's true. There's a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it censorship, but there's a lot of cutting and pasting and this and that by YouTube, which I prefer they didn't do. But the fact is, it's amazing that I can do this stream and, reach you and reach many, many people and hopefully maybe one day get to numbers like Kulinski and the like. But it's odd because he clearly gets that Biden's a disaster. You just heard it. He couldn't have been clearer. And yet, in that entire video, he never mentions the word Jill Stein. And this is a guy who, at least according to Jill Stein, endorsed her. It makes no sense. What is going on here, folks? 240-242-5646. I'm really curious. I'm kind of at a loss. I don't hate this because I guess it leaves me a little bit of a lane. The pro-Jill Stein lane, because there doesn't appear to be one out there, even from people who've been touted as endorsing her. But it's still but that said, look, I want a better future for myself, my family, my children. I want a better future for you. I want sustainability. I want biodiversity. I know we're not getting that with Joe Biden. I know we won't get that with Trump. Maybe we have a shot at getting that with Jill Stein. So why aren't these hosts? There you go. Look, Obama moves on Biden with George Clooney, brutal op-ed. So I'm not going to play from these two. Sagar isn't going to vote for, I don't know who he's going to vote for, but Krystal, supposedly, remember the Vanguard boys? They said, hey, We support. There you go. Kulinski and Krystal Ball endorsed Jill Stein. This is from, I don't know when, earlier this year, a few months ago. So why then? Well, she didn't. Okay. Stein doesn't even claim that. I look through this. You'd think, hey, if we're going to be talking about how Joe Biden can't be president, right? And clearly he's not going to win. That's clearly the implication. Obama moves on Biden with George Clooney, brutal up. Hey, we're pulling out the big guns. You know what? The Democratic Party elites, the leadership, the probably the most popular Democrat in the world, Joe Biden, I guess I guess it's Obama. Who else would it be? Mrs. Obama. Maybe it's Michelle Obama. I don't know. You know, I've heard people say, well, if you really love your country, Michelle, you should run for president. She could announce that she's running for president. She's the most popular choice, according to polling, that she would win. I don't know that she would win. I mean, you know, it's easy to say I'll vote for somebody who's not running for president. But when it comes down to it, what's her experience? She was a corporate lawyer. Is that who we want as our president? I mean, versus a game show host? I actually might vote for Michelle Obama. I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. If Michelle Obama came out, I said this, I might vote for Kamala Harris. If they came out and said, if either of them was running, they came out and said, hey, I'm going to stop the killing in Gaza. I'm going to read the riot act to Bibi. I'm going to stop funding endless war against Russia. Hey, I'd vote for anybody. I'd vote for them. Over and over, we see these progressives talking about how Biden can't win, how Biden's not a viable option. See, I hope I have this. Do I have this clip? I think I do. Yeah. So this is from the Due Dissidence guys. I really like them. I think they're really good. But why aren't they talking? They've made it very, very clear they're not voting for him. They made it very, very clear they're not voting for Demented Joe. They don't agree with Joe. They don't like Joe. They don't like his policies. They think he's terrible. But they can't bring themselves to say vote for Jill Stein. I don't get it. They can't even say her name.
Folks, you may have remembered this. Seems like quite a while ago today, but
so
I think it was only yesterday.
I think this came out either today or yesterday. I'm not sure which. So they're making fun of him, right? That's the whole point of this, is Joe's just totally out of it. He can't win. Why is he running? Why is he being, this is the whole point of this video. And it's like a little entertaining, you know, the old man, the doddering old man that the Democratic Party is trotting out and has no chance to win. That's what they're saying. And I think it's a little unfair. I'll be perfectly honest with you. It's a little unfair. I'll play the clip. I don't think they're being real nice to Joe Biden. I don't like Joe Biden. I agree with Kulinski. Policy is what matters. Biden's policies are awful. But let's play the clip.
Or the day prior. Biden just told a Philly radio station he's proud to be the first black woman to serve with a black president. So this was his rehab tour. This was his recovery tour from the debate.
I'm going to stop it. I'll play in a second. I was like, did he really say that? If you listen, yeah, I mean, it doesn't come out well. He's not, you know, he doesn't speak well anymore, and he's slow and he's behind the curve and all, but this is a little unfair, in my opinion. You see what you think.
One of the major events he did, according to his interview on ABC. Here's this snippet.
I'm proud to be, as I said, the first vice president, first black woman. Served.
He says the first vice president, the first black woman. No, he means, it's clear what he means to have a black woman as his vice president.
With a black president? Proud
to serve as, and then he says black president. Again, he's having trouble getting the words out, but we all know what he meant. This is really unfair. Now, to me, I don't really care about that crap. What I care about is your policy. And your policies are not good for black people. That's why so many, you know, a decent percentage, more than we've seen in many years, are moving to Trump, the guy who said Obama wasn't born in the United States. And yet a lot of black people are saying, hey, you know what? Maybe we're going to vote for Trump because Biden hasn't made things better. So, all of that's just window dressing who your that she's black. I mean, is she progressive? Is she fighting to make life better for poor, struggling, and working people who are disproportionately of color? I don't think so. I've never seen that in Kamala Harris. That's not who she is. She married a multi-millionaire corporate lawyer. She's living large. When she was attorney general, she sided with elites. She threatened, I don't know if she ever did, prosecute families if their kids didn't go to school, threatened to put people behind bars. She refused to decrowd, to reduce overcrowding in California prisons despite a court order to do so. She raised her hand for Medicare for all and then she took it down. So I don't think Joe Biden deserves any credit for, why did I just lose that? I don't think Joe Biden deserves any credit in particular for nominating or for having the first black woman vice president, because she's not a good vice president. But okay, I mean, that is something, I suppose. But he knew what he was saying. He understood what he was saying. So I think this is a little unfair, to be real. I think these guys are being unfair to him. But I'm not playing it to make that point. I'm playing it to say the Due Dissidence team, Krystal, Kyle, they all clearly think Biden can't be president. They all clearly are laughing at Joe Biden. They're all using Joe Biden's verbal gaffes, his inability to string words together coherently, to build their audience, to entertain you. Why don't they use it to build a progressive movement to elect somebody who actually is on your side? That's what they should be doing. That's so disappointing to me. But hey, I mean, it's where we are. Why aren't they? 240-242-5646. And you saw that about Krystal and Sagar saying, that there was a brutal op-ed and takedown by Clooney and Biden. But they don't say, they never mention Jill Stein. I did a search. There's no mention of Jill Stein in their video. There's no mention of alternatives. There's nobody else. You think, well, if you're going to say Joe Biden is gone, he's gaga, he's demented, right? He's demented Joe. If you're going to make that argument, which I don't think is unfair, then who's your alternative? Who are you saying people should? I mean, my point is, I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden if he were, if he were mentally as acute as he was when he shepherded Clarence Thomas through the Supreme Court and gave us arguably the worst and most corrupt Supreme Court justice since Roger Taney. I don't know, was Roger Taney corrupt? He was just evil. He was pro-slavery. But, Joe Biden is not only is he responsible for genocide in what did I just lose my? So weird, man. There we go. I don't know. Did everything disappear on you? I hope not. It's like my screen just dropped off on me. Not only did Joe Biden, is he as responsible as anybody except for Bibi Netanyahu for the eradication of the Gazan people and some of the most painful ordeal that any people have gone through since the Holocaust. Not only did he stop a potential peace deal, which was moving forward 2 years ago in Ukraine, he is as big a reason as any that Clarence Thomas, the worst Supreme Court justice in perhaps the past 150, 60, 70, whatever many years it is on the court. He could have stopped it. He was the head of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Could have stopped it. So here are the Due Dissidence boys mocking Biden and saying, look, he, NATO comes to Washington, which I talked about yesterday. Clooney abandons Biden's progressive, debase themselves for Biden again. So exactly the same as Kulinski, right? You see AOC and Bernie debase themselves. I looked through, again, the transcript. I Googled Stein. The only Stein I found in it was Frankenstein. No joke. No joke. The only Stein, Frankenstein. Why aren't they talking about the alternative? The real alternative, the progressive alternative Jill Stein. Very disappointing. And again, I feel like, that's why I do this, because this voice needs to be out there. Look, the Democratic Party, you saw Bernie and AOC, they absolutely debase themselves, whatever the right word is. Here's Marianne Williamson, somebody I care about, who I think is really, really smart, likes Marianne Williamson. I just saw a post on social media by this person saying, all these good things about Marianne Williamson. I don't see it, but when I read that, I'm like, well, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's something good about her. There's something positive there. And she makes this tweet yesterday. Very disturbing trend among Democratic politicians yesterday. She's talking about Bernie and AOC, I suppose. People publicly supporting Biden while privately acknowledging that they're convinced he can't win. By the way, I said he can't win yesterday, but hey, I looked at those polls. I will change my mind in a heartbeat if the evidence doesn't support what I said. Hey, maybe Biden can win. I don't want him to win. I'm not going to vote for him. I think you should vote for Jill Stein, period, even if you think maybe Joe Biden can win, because he's Genocide Joe. I don't care if he's Demented Joe. I care if he's Genocide Joe. He is Genocide Joe. He's Endless War Joe. He's Drill Baby Drill Joe. That's why you shouldn't vote for him. Williamson say, oh, look, he can't win. So my question to you is, if that's true, Marianne, why aren't you endorsing Jill Stein? Right? I mean, I think her policies are a lot closer to yours than anybody else's out there, and they're a lot closer to yours than Joe's are. At least from what you said. Although I know you support Biden's, and this is why I don't support her. She supports Biden's Israel policy, pretty much. She hasn't really criticized him for it. And she said she would basically do the same thing in Ukraine. She took a lot of flack from that. I know she got a lot of heat from the Revolutionary Blackout Network. Briahna Joy Gray, her biggest supporter on the left, at least, Briahna Joy Gray said, I'm still voting, or I voted for her, whatever. They're like, come on, explain this. And she won't even do it. So, by the way, that's a real weakness in Briahna Joy Gray, as much as I like her. And, and again, I like Briahna Joy Gray. I like my friend on social media who supports Williamson. So I'm like thinking, well, where's the positive? Where's the good? Well, she could do some good here. She could endorse Jill Stein. She could say to her folks, vote for Jill Stein, but she doesn't. And nobody seems to be doing that. I frankly don't get it. It's terrible. All right. We got about 15 minutes. I started a little bit late today. I don't know how long I've been on. Started a little late. So, I got about 15 minutes left. There are some of you who might think, and I showed hey, the latest Washington Post poll says Kamala is a good alternative. Kamala could win, right? Kamala does better. According to that poll I showed from today, released today by the Washington Post, credible. Kamala could beat Trump. Kamala's ahead of Trump, according to that poll. So should we consider Kamala? Remember what I said. If Kamala were pro-peace in Ukraine, if Kamala were anti-genocide in Israel, she were prepared to take the necessary steps, I would be very, very willing to entertain voting for her. Now, her record isn't great. It's not good. In fact, it's bad. But yeah, I'd be willing to, certainly I would entertain a vote for her. Because Trump's bad. I don't want Trump to be president, I would vote for a Kamala Harris if she were clearly an anti-genocide candidate. But the problem is she's not. This is a really, really unfortunate example. She carries water again for the Zionist right, the Zionist militants. We cannot look away, Kamala Harris says after a White House screening of Sheryl Sandberg documentary on sexual violence. So that Sandberg documentary has largely been debunked. She has clips in it of people who are acting. I mean, they're pretending that they really care, that they're really talking about violence or they saw violence, sexualized violence. But the people that they're talking to didn't see it. They've been debunked. They're propagandists. It's Hasbara is what this is. So, no. I mean, that is a huge reason I can't, that's the reason I will not vote for her. Because if you're not for peace, if you're not for an end of the genocide, I can't support you. So let's go to this video, because was this where she says she supports the immediate, I guess, yeah. So she called, well, I already showed that. I'm not going to show that video. She called for that immediate ceasefire, did Kamala. But in the end, it was clear, and she made it clear, did Harris, that her focus is on stopping Hamas. It's Hamas to blame, not Israel, which is absurd. So Harris puts oxygen into the largely debunked story, or the debunked story, that Hamas was engaged in all manner of sexualized violence, that Hamas weaponized violence on October 7th. It just didn't happen. The Times of London couldn't corroborate one claim of sexualized violence on October 7th by Hamas. They couldn't corroborate one. And yet, Kamala Harris, June 17, puffs that up, gins up more anti-Palestine hate. Can't support that. There's just no way. See if I can find it, because there was a really good... Yeah, let me play this. So this is what the UN said about this. This is what the investigation said about this. That it's just not true. I don't know if I ever played you this, but I want to play it now because it's so important. And remember, Kamala, as recently as the middle of June, this is 3 months after the UN could not corroborate the claims. And in fact, it's not that they couldn't corroborate. They just said it's not true. They rejected them. They said that's not what happened. What Israel says, what's in that propaganda by Sheryl Sandberg. And instead of fighting for the victims, Kamala is puffing up the victimizers. So I'm going to play this because it's really, really important. We'll see if we can get the video going. We'll have all the audio, everything work. Here we go.
On Barry, just to clarify, what we found was that there were 2 allegations we looked into that were unfounded, and they're very well described in the report, and you'll recognize them because they were highly publicized in the press. The rest we could not verify. So in short, to answer your question, no, we could not verify any sexual violence in Barry at this point, which does not mean necessarily it didn't occur. It means we couldn't verify it. And 2.
All right, so they couldn't verify any violence in that area where there sexual violence in that area where it was alleged. And this is the story that's in the Sandberg video comes straight out of the Barry area, the kibbutz area, of a woman who had been violated with knives. That is the story that got the most attention in the Sandberg documentary, quote, documentary, unquote. That's where Kamala was so upset. And this 3 months earlier is what the UN is saying about that video. by Sandberg.
Of the cases that were reported were found to be unfounded.
In fact,
So it's not just that they couldn't corroborate. They're not founded. They're not true. What Sheryl Sandberg said isn't true.
I just want to add, there's a third one, Chloe, where there was an allegation that there were objects like knives inserted in the genitalia of a woman. I mean, like, the team reviewed the photos and we did not find anything like that, but which impacted our own work was the fact that inaccurate, unreliable forensic conclusions were drawn by untrained volunteer first responders. And we give some examples. We give some examples in the report, such as interpreting an anal dilation as anal penetration, when, according to our forensic expert, we've extensive burn damage. This is what you get, anal dilation, and the position of the body as a result of severe burn damage, again interpreted as being sexual violence. We've spread legs, etc. So that also, it may not be in bad faith. I don't know, but
So
it
she's
is a
saying
fact that we found many instances
it may not be
of
in bad faith.
unreliable.
In other words, Israel may not be lying. The propagandists may not be deliberately lying, but it's not true. And that's the exact story that Kamala broadcast, promoted, endorsed as accurate, as true, when she screened that Sandberg documentary. Now, I thought there was a really good point, which was, hey, I think, was it Krystal Ball made this point, and I know Arlen's made this point. They're like, well, I don't know why you spent all this time debunking. Well, Krystal didn't make that point. Arlen made the point. Why are you spending all this time debunking the claims by Israel? It's obvious there were horrible things done on October 7. Why do we have to spend time quibbling over whether it's true that a knife or knives were inserted in a woman's vagina? Well, the reason is because those claims are used over and over to justify or to distract us from what Israel's doing, from killing 40, 38, 40, 50, 70, 100, 180,000 people. Those claims, those unfounded claims that Kamala Harris breathed life into, are used to justify genocide. Now, they shouldn't. Even if all these horrific things happened, it still doesn't make it okay what Israel's doing. But they didn't happen. And they're used to justify what Israel's doing. Now, another argument you could make to defend Harris is, well, she's a woman, and women, are going to be more, and understandably so, more upset, more hurt by violence against women, and so she's going to take seriously these claims, even if maybe the UN says they're not true. And my answer is, okay, that's an argument, right? That men may be less troubled by sexual assault. Well, then why isn't she talking about what we do know is happening, which is that Israel is sexually assaulting the Israeli military? Israelis are doing terrible, terrible things to Palestinian women and men. They're committing sexual crimes against Palestinians. Israel is doing this. Where's Kamala on that? If the argument for Kamala is, well, maybe she kind of look, we do know, this would be an argument for, well, we do know there was at least one woman, Amit Susanna, who claims to have been sexually molested while in Hamas captivity. Now, that wasn't on October 7, so maybe the October 7 claims we can't corroborate, but we do know Hamas has at least committed some there are credible allegations. Susanna's claim is, I guess, credible. And also what happened to that German-Israeli woman where she was, in that revealing outfit and she was being paraded as a trophy. We saw the video. It was very troubling. That did happen. That really did happen. She wasn't apparently raped, but it was bad. It was bad that they displayed her body the way they did as a trophy. It was ugly, it was wrong. And she had been fully clothed. Well, I mean, she wore what she wore. They didn't dress her in that, but it looks terrible. It's terrible. It is terrible. So, okay, I get that. But Israel is right now committing sexual crimes against Palestinian women and men. The UN concluded that their charges by Israel against Hamas were unfounded, were uncorroborated, were not sustained. But they also found widespread abuse against Palestinians in Israeli detention centers by Israel, including beatings, dog attacks, prolonged use of stress position, and sexual assault. Why isn't Kamala talking about that? If she's on the side of women, how come she's not talking about the violations, the violence against women by Israel? The Gaza crisis we're not talking about. Disturbing evidence of a sustained Israeli campaign of sexual violence against men and boys. Where's Kamala? I'd like to know, because if she's someone who's really, tears up at trumped up, phony claims, debunked claims of sexual violence against women on October 7 that aren't ongoing at this point. Why is, even if they happened, they're not ongoing now. How come she's not talking about what we do know is happening? Terrible beatings, stress positions. We've seen the wrists where the bindings on the wrists of Palestinians. A number of Palestinian women have come forward and said we were sexually assaulted. They removed our clothes. We were subjected to strip searches. We were assaulted. Palestinian men have objects inserted into them sexually, in rectum. That's rape. Why isn't Kamala talking about that? Well, because Israel's our closest ally. Because of all the AIPAC money that would be used to undermine any campaign that she might launch if she did champion human rights, rights for women, rights to be safe from sexual assault. But for that reason, she's not qualified to be president. And for that reason, I again say, how come Krystal? How come Kyle? How come the Due Dissidence boys? Well, they're not really boys. The Due Dissidence bros. How come they're not talking about the one candidate who really is on the side of the Palestinian people, on the side of peace? Why aren't they talking about Jill Stein? I read, I'm going to put this up. I'm going to end the program here in a moment, but I just wanted to put this. This is from our friend of the show, Bill Neal, who calls for an alternative to Biden. And he explains why there's so much antipathy towards Joe Biden, despite claims by Paul Krugman, despite claims by Larry Summers, how great the economy is, and yeah, the stock market's up and profits are up, but most people are not doing well. They know that they're not secure, that any good times are only relatively good compared to recent bad times, that their safety, their security, their protection from the vicissitudes of the economy is gone, that both parties are beholden to the billionaire class. And that's why even when I read that maybe Joe Biden, under Biden, we produce more oil and gas than under any other president ever. We have not taken on the oil and gas company. But yeah, Biden, maybe he's not quite as bad as Trump. But they're both on the side of the elites. They're on the side of the billionaire class. They're on the side of the drillers. They're on the side of the genociders. And I'm just not going to vote for that. I just will not vote for that. You do have an option. And even if Due Dissidence bros don't tell you that, even if Kyle Kulinski, who endorsed Jill Stein, won't tell you that, you do have an option. And I hope you'll use it. Because whoever the Democrat nominates, whoever the Democrats ultimately put up against Trump, they're going to be bad. They're not going to be on your side. I was really, really pleased. And, I had to ask him. I had to ask this question. David Swanson did not say this without my questioning. He said, and I was really amazed by this, by the way. I'm going to play I played this clip yesterday. But I was really amazed when I was at this event that David Swanson said, Biden and Trump are unacceptable, but Biden's dementia provides us an opportunity to really push the Democratic Party to nominate progressive. And I was like, what are you smoking? Why would you think they would? What are you smoking? The Democratic Party ain't nominating any progressives. That's not what they do. The people who control the party aren't going to nominate. Why would you? I was really astonished by that comment. And as a result, I asked the question, rather than supporting a Democratic alternative, why not just vote for Jill Stein? And here's what Swanson said.
Have one someday. At the moment, we do not. But my God, yes, Jill Stein is one of us. She's a friend. She's an ally of many, many years. I've learned many, many things from her. She's brilliant. She's dedicated. She's been viciously smeared and lied about. She had the kindness to once ask me if I'd like to be vice president, and I didn't want to be, but she, yeah, of course, if you want to vote for someone, nobody should vote for Trump or Biden, my God, but if you want to vote for somebody good, she's somebody good, but I could take one of these books and throw it, and I would hit somebody 1,000 times better than Trump or Biden. It's not a high bar. The only other thing I want to say is that NATO has done us.
The rest of it, and he's going to talk about NATO, but right. It's just that simple. The only decent alternative, and I get a lot of people here have accepted the narrative that Trump is the, I don't know, I can't come up with, I've called him the Antichrist, what I know people think of him as the Antichrist, as Satan, he's worse than Hitler, or Genghis Khan, I use as another example. Okay, fine, you want to say that. How much farther behind is Joe Biden? And why aren't other progressive hosts talking about this? All right, I'll be back tomorrow. Just real quick, tomorrow's Friday, the free-for-all. I have more. Finally, I think I'm going to get to this social media meme I really wanted to talk about. It struck my attention, but I just never got around to it. Didn't have the time. And I'll be off next week. Just so folks know, I'm off. I told you I was going to be off a bit this summer. Took the week off. Went to Germany. I'll be off next week and then the following Monday. So that's 6 days. I won't be doing the live stream. And then there'll be one more period. 4 days, I think, 5 days, probably 4 days in August that I won't be doing the show. So join me tomorrow. Hope you call in 24242-5646. Call in tomorrow, and then have a great weekend and following week. Thanks for being